Hello, friends, and welcome to Season 3 of Hops and Hedges, the podcast where we talk about beer, landscaping, and everything in between. I'm your host, Heather Gerard from My Landscape Artist, and I am so glad you're here. Hops and Hedges is proudly sponsored by ext.tech, and you're going to want to stick around until the end of the show for an exclusive discount code to use for their powerful CRM software and mobile app. Now crack open a cold one, and let's dig in. There we go. With me today, all the way from New York, is Russell Van Brocklin. You are the founder and researcher of Dyslexia Classes. I am so excited to have you on the show today, Russell. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to pick your brain about all things dyslexia and the work that you've done. So let's just get right into it. So people who don't know you and don't know who you are, can you give us a lowdown as to what Dyslexia Classes is, what it is that you do, and why are you amazing?
Well, my start in this kind of shocks people. It goes back to the late 90s. I was finishing up college and I wanted to know how laws were created, not some class I wanted to know. So I signed up and was accepted to the New York State Assembly internship program, which was just a really crazy idea for me. And people ask, well, what's the issue? You're at the end of college. It's when you do this sort of thing. Well, I showed up and I said, here's my neuropsychological evaluation. I have a first grade reading and writing level.
Okay.
Which means I couldn't do the internship because back then you had the elected official, the chief of staff, who was probably an intern a year or two before, and then the intern. And I was supposed to answer questions, take notes, type up memos, file things, which I couldn't do. So the director went to the speaker's office, kind of freaked out. And the speaker said, you're not getting rid of this kid because of dyslexia. Figure it out. So they got a senior committee together. And they came up with a rather radical solution. They literally pulled me out of the legislative office building and they moved me over to the Capitol. And when I walked in, I could see why. There were 3 administrative assistants who could help me with my horrible writing. But this is a group that ran the assembly day to day. They had no idea what to do with an undergrad. So they treated me like a graduate student, which was a real staff position. So I'm getting real policy work to do. And everybody else is getting, get the coffee and answer the phone sort of stuff. So I had a great internship for the academic portion. I ended up doing a multi-hour presentation Q&A session instead of the paper. So at the end, they put 15 credits of A-, recommended grade, 15 credits of A-. Then they send it back to the flagship university of the State University of New York system, this Buffalo Center at Buffalo, to the political science department. And they looked at these massive, outrageously complex accommodations and said, we don't like what the state gave you, so we're lowering your grade. Guess what they lowered it to?
Plus?
They flunked me. No,
What?
flunked me. They gave me
crazy.
15 credits of F. Yeah, decimated my GPA. So at this point, I just remember where I came from. I knew the people that were running the assembly day to day. I spent nights with them. I spent weekends with them. My choice. They never asked. I volunteered. All right. So I was offered lobbying positions. They were state positions that I was offered because of how well I did and who I knew. Remember, they treated me like a grad student, not some college kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave all that up to fix dyslexia. So I went to some of my professors and I said, where can I go to force myself to learn to read and write in grad school? And they said, well, if you like politics, it's obvious. Law school. So I went and I audited 2 law school classes with the inability to read or write. So I kind of forced myself to read a bit. Then I walked in. It was my second day of contracts and the professor called on me. And what they do in law school is, if you don't know the answer, which nobody does the first week, is they keep asking you questions until they embarrass you publicly until you eventually adapt. That didn't happen to me. I responded as the professor's equal, not as a student. We went back and forth for 15 minutes. I couldn't beat him. He couldn't beat me. At the end, he said, you couldn't be any more correct. And he had to move on to the next case in the interest of time. I learned to read within a month. I learned to write within a couple of years. Then I went back to the New York State Senate and I said, I want you to fund my dyslexia research program, which they don't do. So they sent me off to the New York State Education Department. And they said, well, if you want us to even look at this, we want a SUNY distinguished professor in psychology to evaluate this. I said, oh, okay. So I go out to Buffalo and there's got to be a bunch of them. It's their highest rank. There's two. One just happened to be the one who gave me the evaluation that I originally gave the assembly. So she said she would do it. 20 hours of testing over 3 days from the smartest woman I ever met. And it was a 5-page report. What she said was my reading and writing goes from that of a 6-year-old to above average of entering grad students. I'm going from a part of my brain that doesn't work to one that does work. Here's the 5-page report on what happened. So I brought that back to the education department. They're like, okay, how do we get rid of this kid? Well, you got to catch it up with current research. So there's only one person that made any sense. His name was Professor James Collins. He had $1.5 million grant from the U.S. Education Department. And I extended his work from mild dyslexia to severe dyslexia. People said it was going to take years. He's really hard. I did it in under 2 weeks. Notice how well I'm doing in graduate school compared to college. Okay. So then I go back and I said I got the approval. Oh, by the way, I got $15,000 from the University of Buffalo's in a university-wide competition. And the education department's kind of like, what the heck? So we go on, we tested in a public school for a couple of years. The first student, her name was Michaela. She was, just so everybody knows, I'm dealing with highly motivated, highly intelligent high school juniors and seniors. I'm dealing with the elite, the smart, motivated students like me. I wanted to see what I could do with them. She was writing at the middle school level. A couple months later, she was writing average of entering graduate students. So then we did that for a couple of years. The school district goes to the politician. They go, we want this. And they say, okay. So we are funded by the state senate for a couple of years. Money went right to the school district. 1 class period a day for the school year. The students increased from juniors and seniors in high school, went from the middle school to the average range of entering graduate students. They all went on to college. They all graduated, GPAs of 2.5 to 3.6. Compared to the best dyslexic college at the time, Landmark College, we were 3x as successful for less than 1% of the cost. A little under $900 per student for the cost of New York State taxpayers. And that's how I got started.
Holy smokes. Russell, that's not like just a small little blip on the radar. You
Yeah.
are persistent. You do not give up easily.
Yes, now people might think that, wow, I found a solution for dyslexia. Everything's great. Not the case.
Not the case.
Took a little trip down to present my findings to the International Dyslexia Association in New York City in 2000. I thought I solved it. I thought this was amazing. I thought I was done. I wasn't even getting started. There were 2 groups that were there. The professors came to me and said, Russell, you had 2 kids in this last year who scored in about the 70th percentile of undergrad students from middle school level. We don't care. We want the craft of research. I was like, the craft of what? They said the craft of research. It's a book that came out in 1995 from the University of Chicago to teach PhD students how to write their doctoral dissertations. And they wanted me to teach this to high school dyslexics. By the way, no private school in the country deals with this at the high school level because it's too evolved.
Wow.
Yeah. So what I had to do is I had to figure out, it's divided into context, get everybody on the same page. What's a unique problem statement where you can do it and it actually solves a real problem, then a unique solution. So then I went to the teachers and they said, does this work for normal kids? And I said, absolutely not. They said, come back when it does. So I came back 8 years later. And well, now I'm going to show you what dyslexia really is and how parents, your audience tonight, can apply this not only to ADD kids, ADHD kids, and dyslexics. The biggest issue I get, first of all, are these kids are writing a bunch of randomly placed misspelled words in elementary school, and nobody knows how to fix it. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is the top book in the field called Overcoming Dyslexia by Dr. Sally Shaywitz from Yale. All right?
Mhm.
And this is dyslexia. Do you see how the back part of the normal brain has this massive neural activity?
Yeah.
Now, do you see how the back part of the dyslexic brain is basically about 0? Now, the front part of the dyslexic brain is about 2.5 times overactive. Okay? So what we have to do is simply take the process that's supposed to happen back here and move it up here. And Yale says this part of the brain deals with word analysis followed by articulation. So I got a weird idea. This is the #1 book in my field. This is the science. Let's follow the science.
Yeah.
Radical idea. Okay? So do you know any elementary school dyslexic kid or ADD or ADHD kid who's writing a bunch of randomly placed misspelled words at any point in your life?
Quite possibly.
Okay. Do you have
Sure,
a
yep.
specific Do you have
I'm not in the area. So I would say I don't work with kids.
no, but just from your own personal experience.
None comes to mind exactly, but
Okay.
I'm sure there are lots. I was
So I'm just
probably
going
one of them.
so when you were a kid, when you were in elementary school, were you writing apparently randomly placed misspelled words?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
I mean, was your writing so bad nobody could even make sense of it? The words are scattered, they're misspelled, they're all over the place. Nobody can even start with helping you with sentences, or not really.
No, I don't think I did struggle with that.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is give you an example of Sarah, who I
Okay.
use in these cases, and I'm going to show you how to tutor Sarah in the next 10 minutes on how to do this.
Whew. Okay.
Okay.
I'm ready.
So let me tell you about Sarah. At the time, she was 10 years old in fifth grade, writing randomly placed misspelled words. This is something that is critically important. Her favorite thing in the world was swimming. She was on the swim team. She got in the pool every chance she could get. It's her favorite thing ever. Okay. So if you were teaching Sarah, the first thing you would do is pull out a laptop computer, not an iPad, not an iPhone, and certainly not handwriting. And then you're going to type out hero, plus sign. What are we talking about? And then Sarah's going to copy that. And I can hear your audience screaming, but the kids aren't allowed to copy. Professor James Collins, Strategies for Struggling Writers, Default Writing Strategy of Copying. It's fine. So she copies that out until it's correct. Then we're going to swap out hero for Sarah. So now it's Sarah plus sign. What are we talking about? Then we're going to go to a list of 10 things that Sarah really, really likes. And then 10 things she really, really doesn't like. And on the top of the list that she really, really likes is swimming. So we got Sarah plus sign. What are we talking about? We're going to swap out what are we talking about for swimming. So we got Sarah plus sign swimming. See how we got there?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to try to fool you with two of the simplest questions you will ever be asked. They are so simple. If you answer them exactly, this will work. If it doesn't, you're going to get very confused. And then you'll have an epiphany. The light bulb will shine and you will truly understand what dyslexia is.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Do you think I can do you think?
Probably. I'm also really gullible.
Okay. Well, these are going to be the two simplest questions you'll ever be asked. So we got Sarah plus sign swimming. We got to replace the plus sign with a word. Here's my question. Does Sarah like or dislike swimming?
Sarah likes swimming.
Yes, but that's not what I asked.
Like.
Let's try it again. Does
Sarah
Sarah like? Okay, what did you just say?
Like.
Okay, you got it. Now go ahead and give me the 3-word sentence.
Sarah like swimming.
You are one of the less than 10% of the people that figured that out.
Yes.
So what happened the first time?
Defaulted to what I believe to be correct
Right,
instead
so
of listening to you and copying the word that you said.
Right. So just so everybody knows what's going on, you're educated. This is what's going on in a typical brain that it's done with this massive activity from a normal brain. Okay.
Yeah.
The dyslexics have next to nothing. ADHD brain is much more similar to a dyslexic than to a normal brain. So what happened is when I asked Sarah like or dislike, you automatically added the S and made it a proper sentence because that's what you've been trained to do. It's been ground into you. The problem is with Sarah, it's going to the back part of her brain. She doesn't know how to add the S. Okay. She has no idea. So what the traditional method is to use an Orton-Gillingham multi-sensory approach of seeing, touching, hearing, all this together. Takes 2 years to learn, $11,000, and the private schools take to correct everything once you're in fifth grade, about 4 to 5 years at $75,000 a year. And their success rate is pushing 100%. If you don't have an extra house that you own that you can sell, here's how we do it. What we would do is we're going to use the front part of the brain, word analysis first. So we ask Sarah, do you like or dislike swimming? She's going to say like. So we got Sarah like swimming. Then I'm going to ask Sarah, read that out loud. Does that sound generally correct? And she's going to say no. They're going to say Sarah likes swimming. And we're going to practice that with the other 9 likes and 10 dislikes until she has it down. Do you see how that's a simple form of word analysis? Now we're going to go because reason 1. Give me a simple reason of why a 10-year-old girl would like swimming.
It's fun.
Yeah, that's what everybody says. Sarah likes swimming because it's fun. And the problem is with those randomly placed misspelled words. So what we tell Sarah is read what she wrote out loud. Forget about spelling. Does it sound generally correct? And if not, keep fixing it until it does. Now we remove those horrendously horrible misspelled grammar errors. We're down to some medium ones and a bunch of small ones. Teachers are equipped to deal with that. They can now the grammar's now been workable. Now for the spelling, here's how we fix that. We tell Sarah every time she misspells a word, she has to retype it. And she's going to do that about 3 to 13 times each sentence. Each time she's going to tell herself, I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm not going to make that mistake. And she makes it again and again. So she concentrates harder and harder. And that's where up front the magic eventually happens and she gets it right. Do you see how the reasons are a simple form of articulation?
Mm-hmm.
Now we moved it from back here to up here. We have 2.5 times the neural activity. We do that for the rest of the 9 likes and 10 dislikes for reason 1, the 20 likes and dislikes for reason 1 and reason 2, and the 20 likes and dislikes for reason 1, reason 2, and reason 3. At the end of that, the student's writing a correctly spelled, decent grammar, 3 reason sentence. And here's the thing about reading. If you can type out a word properly, you can read it. If you can write it, you can read it. So that's how we get started. And that took about 10 minutes. Now, if you want to go, wow, here's the other issue I run into. Now, you think you're ADHD. Let's go and see if you are. You ready?
Okay.
I want you to tell me your speciality, your area of extreme interest and ability.
I am very all over the place.
No, but
So
what is one thing you really like and you're really good at and you love doing it all day long?
can I say I'm a joy spreader? I like spreading joy.
Yeah, spreading joy. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you're
Okay.
thinking about spreading joy, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you're thinking about spreading joy and you want to write about it, fingers, keyboard, fingers, keyboard. The idea's in your head. You take your fingers, put them on the keyboard. Does the idea then fly out of your head, leaving you with an empty brain? That's you or not really?
I'm like actually putting my fingers on the keys and I'm like,
And
don't
the
know what to
idea
write.
flies out of your head, leaving you with an empty brain. The idea's there, but once your fingers hit the keyboard, it flies out empty head.
Yeah,
Is that
I think that's what is happening.
okay?
Like I wouldn't know what to. That's weird.
So no, the idea's in your head.
Yeah.
Your fingers go on the keyboard. Does the idea then fly out of your head, leaving you with an empty brain? If
I
it,
don't think, yeah, I kind of feel like it's full. It's like, what do I
okay,
write?
yeah,
Because
then
theater
that's
is joy and talking is joy and laughing is joy and I could tell a joke and I could do acting
yeah,
and I
that's
start
not you.
thinking about, okay,
Yeah. So what's going on? If you answered yes to the second question, that would indicate severe dyslexia. So
Okay.
you are either ADD or mildly dyslexic.
okay.
Okay. Now I want you to think back to when you were going through school. I want you to think when you really, really enjoyed the class, probably in college. Can you see how you were really laser focused? You put a ton of work in. You loved it. Sound
Yeah.
familiar?
Yeah.
Now I want you to think of a class you freaking hated.
Yeah.
It was just so hard for you to do anything. You take the minimum grade just to get out of it. Sound familiar?
Yeah. And sometimes just didn't bother showing up to it.
So here's the key thing. For most people like us, if we step outside of our speciality, our motivation drops 75 to 90%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So rule number 1,
See that.
when you're dealing with dyslexics or ADD or ADHD, for the intervention period, we need to focus on our speciality. Number 2, what we need to do is, because the front part of the brain, it's just because we have all that activity with little to no organization. What we have to do is force the dyslexic brain or ADHD brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. Let me give you an example. I want you to imagine you were given this job, okay? You had to go and write this paper. Would this be difficult for you? What effect did Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech have on the American civil rights movement of the 1960s? Would that be kind of hard for you to try to think about, to organize, to conceptualize the way that was given to you?
I think I would probably do a deep dive, and just
Right,
research and just until I came up with my own idea.
Right, but just thinking about where to get started. Do you see how your thoughts are just shooting all over the
Oh
place? It's
yeah.
hard to get something organized. So
Okay.
do you see how trying to answer that is kind of like grabbing fog?
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Because I asked you a very broad question. But what if I were to do this? What if I were to start off at a very specific point? What personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech? You know exactly what to do now. We go to his biography and we find out. That answer will give us another question, which will give us an answer, which will give us a question, which will give us an answer, which will force our brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. We start off at a very specific point, and then we slowly spread out from there, and that's much easier for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then the final part of the model is we do word analysis followed by articulation. Parents ask, well, how effective is that? Well, I'm going to give you an example from my book. It's going to be called If You Can Write, If You Can Write, You Can Read. All right. And it's about Kimberly, who I met in December 27th of 2024. Kimberly is a homeschooling mom with some college, a very religious family, and she properly taught her Reed's four brothers and sisters to read extraordinarily well with traditional means, but she failed miserably with Reed. She just spent $700 to have him tested mid-December of that year, a couple weeks before we spoke. He was 10 years old, fifth grade, reading at the 11th percentile, writing at the 4th percentile. I worked with Kimberly for half an hour a week for the rest of the school year. She worked with Reed for 3 half-hour sessions, or about 90 minutes a week. Most parents do 10 to 15-minute sessions, so you can see how that you can translate that, how much Kimberly spent with them. At the end of the school year in June, he had an increase, which I'm not going to tell you, because over the summer, Reed's friends came to him and said, Reed, we want you in public school to be with us socially. So in beginning to mid-August, call it 8.5 months later, he's in a public school getting retested. Much better data. Well, he had a bit of an increase. Remember, if he scored anywhere close to what he did in the 11th percentile in reading and 4th percentile for writing, he's in special ed, away from his friends, unhappy kid.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. His reading went from the 11th percentile to the 64th. His writing went from the 4th percentile to the 65th. His grammar went to the 9th percentile.
Wow.
I asked Kimberly how he's doing in school in February, and she said he's mainly getting A's and B's. They went through a hugely traumatic family event, so he hasn't been turning in his English homework. He's at a C plus. Once he turns it in, probably be a B minus, maybe a B. Kimberly did what every parent dreams of. She solved this on her own, not in 4 or 5 years at 75 grand a year like the private dyslexic schools. She did this in an hour and a half a week over 8.5 months.
Wow.
That's how powerful this is.
This is,
And Kimberly's,
yeah. It just sounds like this is going to really impact a lot of lives out there once they know how to, get their hands on this, like this process that you have, right? I think you call it the writing method.
Yes, but that's just the beginning of it. Now, what do you do about the older kids?
Yeah.
All right. So what I'm about to explain, just so everybody knows, how far did you go in your education?
For me, I graduated college.
Okay. And what type of grades did you generally end up with?
Pretty good. A's and B's.
A's and B's. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is show you how to write a body paragraph in ways you haven't even imagined yet.
Okay. Before we get into
Okay.
that, can we
Mhm.
do a cheers? Because
Sure.
I am just so enthralled by what you're saying, and I'm really enjoying this actually. But I also really want to have a sip of my beer, and I don't want to seem rude. So
Okay. Go ahead.
cheers to you, Russell. Thank you for
There you go.
coming on the show. I see you've got a Yeti with you. And
Yes.
what's your beverage of choice today?
Ice water.
Ice water. Very luxurious.
I'm on a very strict diet. I've lost 80 pounds. I got another 120 to go.
Good for you. That's huge. Like, that is not easy to do. That is
Oh, yeah, it is. I just swim an hour and a half a day and eat a diabetic diet. And yeah, the pounds melt off.
with the swimming and the diet. That's
Yeah. Yep.
okay. That is really good to know. I'm sure there's other people listening who are probably struggling with something similar. So, swimming, and you said specifically a diabetic diet?
The diabetic diet, I have a big salad with just lettuce and tomatoes and a little bit of Italian dressing that's fat free. I eat a larger lean meat portion than they recommend because I swim a lot,
Yep.
and then I have like a slice or two of 45 calorie bread or 3 micro potatoes.
Wow. Okay. Good to know. Very
Yeah.
cool. Okay. I didn't mean to cut you off. We had a little bit
Okay.
of a segue
So,
there. But yeah,
so
later,
I
how are we
want
going to
you.
write a paragraph?
Well, we have to do an advanced paragraph
Okay.
because what I just showed you is great for 4th and 5th graders. But what do we do for, college kids, high school kids? So what I'm going to explain to you is the best way. It's going to seem weird, but it'll make sense in a moment. I use movie reviews because I use the universal themes. So
Okay.
I want you to think about a movie that you think is one of the best of all time,
Done.
that everyone's seen, okay, that you know intimately really well. What's that movie?
Princess Bride.
The Princess Bride. Okay, now I'm going to ask you, just so everybody can remind you, you've been through college, you did well. And I'm going to ask you a tough question.
Okay.
Now, but because you're ADHD, you probably answer this much faster than most people.
Okay.
Remember how I said I did really well in grad school? If you ever go to grad school, it's going to be profoundly unfair to be ADHD. Profoundly, because you're in your little niche area.
Right.
Okay, so here's my question for The Princess Bride. I need you to reduce that to a one-word universal theme that best represents the movie. What's that word?
Inconceivable.
Most people that aren't neurodiverse would probably be thinking for 10 to 20 seconds. Okay. Conceivable. Okay. Now, here's the problem with The Princess Bride. If you read about from the Washington Post, New York Times, whenever it came out, you'd have these Ivy League educated people telling you this happened, then this happened, then this happened. They ruined the movie. Sound familiar?
Yep.
Here's how we write a movie, not like a child. We would take the universal theme of inconceivable, and then you pick your favorite actors in the movie and ask, how did they do with that universal theme of inconceivable? How did the director do? How did the screenwriter do? And you put that into a review, then people can read and say, do I want to see this movie or do I not want to see this movie? If I want to see it, you've enhanced their experience because now they know what to look for.
Right.
But you didn't ruin it for them. You enhanced it. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah.
Here's the problem. You can only paint with a broad brush because inconceivable is such a broad universal theme. You can't laser focus. It's broad. So we have to now figure out how do we fix that. So I'm now going to traumatize your audience for some of them.
Oh, no.
Yes, I have
Okay.
to bring you back to high school English.
Actually enjoyed English. I was
Okay.
one of those weird theater kids.
Well, this is going to be great because, in my opinion, Shakespeare was the best communicator in English language history. All right. So let's see how we did it. Take any of his plays. You have a hero. The hero would want to accomplish something related to one or more universal themes. Then there would be an ultimate villain, a person, a concept, or some combination there too, that would try to stop the hero from accomplishing their goal. They would start to interact and have conflict in Act 1. It would build through Act 2, resolve in Act 3. Sound familiar? How do we simplify that to do more evolved writing for body paragraphs? So what we're going to do is let's take The Princess Bride. All right. We're going to start off with a hero in that movie. Who's the hero?
The Dread Pirate Roberts.
Okay. The pirate. The pirate wants to do something. You're going to write out paragraphs of what the pirate wants to do. Okay. And then for each sentence, you're going to find the most important word. And then you're going to find the best, most important word. Then we're going to have a list of all the most important words. And then you're going, for each one, type out the word, and you're going to look up the definition, the Merriam-Webster's online dictionary. You are not going to copy and paste. You are not going to copy and paste. You're going to pick the definition and type out the definition, the word and definition for each one. And I can hear the parents in your audience saying now, but my kid won't do it. I want you to understand that this is how I teach reading, because I'm going back to the science, and I explain this to the dyslexic kids. The front part of the brain is massively overactive. It starts off with word analysis. And I ask my kids, and I just say, this is a go, no go if we're going to continue working together. How can you apply word analysis if you don't know exactly what the word means? You can't. So here's my question. I got you in your speciality. I've made this as the most interesting I can for you. Now, this is what I need you to do. There's going to be a lot of typing out the word and typing out the definition, because at some point you would have done this so many times, you know the word and the definition. Then we can apply word analysis. Then I can show you how to articulate at the evolved level, or I can't, and we're done. And then you're stuck where you are. We're in your speciality. So I want you to think, if we were in your speciality and we had this conversation when you were 13, would you do the work?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Here's what parents in your audience need to understand. In your speciality, yes. We step outside of that, no. So in the intervention period, that's critical. So then you type out all that. Then we pick out the best one. But it's like you had with inconceivable. It's too broad. So then we go and we put it into the thesaurus. Parents typically do 5 words, 5 synonyms, 10 synonyms, the whole level, multiple levels. Pick
Hmm.
what you want. And then you have the kid, let's say it's 10. They're going to type out each word, look up the definitions, type out the definitions. And again, as they do this over the course of months, they will know this. They'll just say, I know that word. And they will. So then they pick the one that best matches what's in their head. It'll never be perfect, but
Yeah.
it's much closer. Then we can laser focus and come up with the optimum villain. I start off with a person, eventually go to concepts. So then we have the hero, the universal theme, the ultimate villain, separated by plus signs. We ask the kid, does that sound correct? No, fix it.
Hmm.
Do you see how that's an evolved form of word analysis? Okay, then we go because, and I asked for 3 really good reasons. And then for each reason, I say, give me a simple universal theme. And we take that universal theme, we'll go to the script of The Princess Bride, and I'll ask for a 1-sentence quote for that universal theme at the beginning of the script and one at the end. We put those 2 together.
Hmm.
That's our data. From that, we then create our topic sentence. Now, do you remember in college when you're doing your term paper and you're editing them that you could never really get the topic sentence and the data to flow really well?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Typically, most people find that difficult. So
Okay.
here's my question. Have you
Mhm.
ever thought of applying a warrant to a body paragraph?
I'm not sure what that means.
Anybody outside of a doctoral candidate generally has no idea what it means, including virtually everybody with a master's degree.
Okay.
A warrant is a central part of the craft of research. It connects your topic sentence with your data by answering a how and why question.
Okay.
So because we both universal themes are based on the same warrant, this is the same universal theme, we can do it with one warrant. So we'll have our topic sentence, we'll answer a how and why question, and then we'll have our 2 quotes. Now, in our paid online classes, we show you a few more steps, but that's essentially the main part of it. Why is this important? Give you an example. I had a 7th grade dyslexic client
Hmm.
who was just run down. He had all these increases. He still felt like he was nothing. His older brother, which typically happens, he was a senior in high school, fighting to be valedictorian, was in advanced placement English. I took a paragraph of his brother, and a paragraph from my 7th grader, and I gave it to a university professor. And the university professor said, that kid is using a warrant. That must be at the college level.
Ah.
He's writing a technically more evolved paragraph than his older brother, who once he found out, flipped out. And I told his younger brother, isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
You want to talk about a self-confidence boost.
That'll do it.
So that's how you do that. And that is just a version of how we do context.
Wow. You are a wealth of information. And I'm sure that there are plenty of people listening who either have someone in their life who is struggling through dyslexia or, are challenged with it every day themselves. So I do really hope that people do reach out to you. I know that your website, dyslexiaclasses.com, right? That's the best way people can find you and what you're
Yeah,
doing.
there's a button there that says download free guide, which you can just click on it, answer 3 questions, and then you can set up a time to speak with me. But there's just one more quick example. People ask, well, what happens beyond this?
Right.
So I like to give an example of Grayson. Grayson
Mm.
isn't dyslexic. He's not ADD. He's just in the 9th percentile in math and science. Super bright kid. Grayson wants to get his PhD and work at NASA to terraform Mars.
Wow.
So his dad is teaching him how to go through what we just discussed. Then we're going to show him how to do a problem statement and then the solution. I already know exactly what he needs to do. And then we're going to go ahead and work with him to submit his article to a very specific journal, which will accept submissions from junior researchers, which they consider PhD candidates. How old do you think Grayson is?
I bet you're going to surprise me. Under
Yeah, he's
20?
on the young side. No, Grayson's 10.
Oh my gosh.
And he's not dyslexic in the least. So we also work with the most advanced gen ed kids.
Yeah.
They fly through the process. With Grayson, what we're going to do is once he's ready, probably at 13 or 14, is we're going to arrange to have him speak to a senior professor in this area. And we're going to submit his article. It will be rejected. And that list of why it's rejected,
Yeah.
we're going to bring to the professor and say, Grace is going to say, well, I want to publish my article. These are things I need to fix. Can I work with you on it? And watch the professor's jaw drop.
Right.
So you'll be about a decade ahead of when he's supposed to do that. Even if it takes the next 5 years, once he's published, that should get him into a doctoral program. He publishes
Wow.
once or twice more. Excellent candidate for NASA.
That's amazing. Talk about, dreams when we're kids. I know that's
Yeah.
something I didn't get a chance to ask you at the beginning, but I'd love to know, when you were a kid, do you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Oh, I remember exactly what I wanted
Yeah.
to do. I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. My uncle graduated top in his class from Clarkson from 65 to 95. He did all the cool stuff.
Hmm.
And I desperately wanted to be him. And I did really well in math and science through high school. And then in college, I flunked Calc 1 and Calc 2 7 times. It
That
finally
darn
got to me that
calculus.
I didn't have the brains to do it. But then I went on to neuroscience, and that was much easier.
Just this little thing called neuroscience. It was much easier.
Well, I mean, when we eventually got to it, let's see, how hard is this?
Right?
Back part of the brain, nothing. Front part, 2.5 times overactive.
Yep.
Let's use the front part. I don't understand why this is hard to understand.
Right. Yeah.
So what I just
Wow.
described to you, yeah, that was my journey that took 25 years.
Wow. Each one of us, we have a unique journey, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Before I let you go, we are approaching the end of our time, but I did want to ask you because I know that in the pre-interview questionnaire you had mentioned, but there's a mentor in your life that you wanted to give a shout out to, Professor James Holmes. Can you talk to us about?
Yes. So just about Professor James Holmes, he is one of the foremost macroeconomists on the planet. So here's his story. He didn't start to learn to read or write until 5th grade. He's severely dyslexic. He had zero chance of going to college in high school. Zero. Then he entered the science competition, which in the 1950s was a really big deal. And he won the state of Indiana. Then he got 3rd place in the country. So now he's getting A's everywhere because, wow, he's brilliant. So then he goes to college. He started off with 7 majors. He ended up with 3. They would not allow him a degree in English, no matter how good he was at analyzing Shakespeare. The president of his college arranged for him to be interviewed by the second leading economist of the 20th century, which got him the top scholarship at the top economic program on the planet called the University of Chicago. He said he stopped counting the rewrites of his dissertation at 100. And only through some sheer beyond human effort did eventually get edited parts of it so he could start publishing. He said once he finished, he always had a co-author. He came up with the brilliant concepts, the brilliant ideas, and the co-author, get this, wrote the essay, contributed a few things.
Yeah.
But he got their name beyond past his for the simple fact that they could write.
Huh. Wow. Just incredible.
Yeah, he was, if it wasn't for him, so just, what he taught us causality. We would have some variables we want to explain. Then we would look at causal variables underneath, look at each one in separate, and then put them together. When I was doing that law thing I told you about, I made the explained variables at a higher end, the causal variables below, and I just stacked them. Individual versus the state. All that happened in my head in a fraction of a second, and I could then argue with the professor all day long.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then when in law school, I went and I wrote up what I did. And he said, if you could do half of this, you'd be an A student anywhere. And people ask me, well, why didn't I become a lawyer? I did really great in class. I crushed the exams. I couldn't do the legal research and writing, not at the pace that they demand. Lawyers read and write more than anybody. And I just could not keep up.
Right. Yep. It's a crazy world out there. I couldn't imagine reading and writing at like the speed of light, it seems like. You have to do.
There is one famous dyslexic lawyer who is well known in New York State, and how she does it is she listens at like 500 words a minute, and she can retain and use, and then she dictates.
Wow.
And that's how she does it. And she's an
crazy.
extraordinarily effective attorney. I couldn't do it. I'd have to listen at a normal pace. And she said, then you couldn't function as a lawyer because nobody's going to pay you these rates.
Yeah.
To take things at 120 words a minute when she has to take it at 500.
Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, my husband listens to the news and podcasts and stuff, I think at like 2.5 speed. And he'll be like, here, listen to this. And I can't make it out.
No. I have over 600 audiobooks. I like certain narrators, and when you turn it into a chipmunk, you ruin it.
Right? It just takes it all like, no, not into that. So your website, once again, is dyslexiaclasses.com. Your book is coming out this year, titled If You Can Write, You Can Read. I'm going to be
Yes.
keeping my eyes out for that. I think you said it's coming out on Kindle first. Is that what you said?
Yes, we're going to keep it up. Yeah, we're going to keep it on Kindle.
Okay.
Because what we're going to do is we're going to be adding a lot. I have just so everybody knows, we met on Podmatch. The
We
number
did.
one guest on, yes, I'm the number one guest on Podmatch yet
Yep.
again. Nobody else has done it like this for more than 2 months. And I have over 150 podcasters that want me back to discuss the book. And that's why I did it. Because we used to go to bookstores and radio interviews, but now there's no more bookstores because 80% of all books sold in the United States are on Amazon.
Yeah.
So we're going to start off with Kindle, keep it there for a while, make sure we add all the blurbs we get from podcasters. And once we're done, then we'll finally do the
That's awesome. Well, I am keeping my eye out for it because you are very personable. I've personally thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I think that the work that you're doing is fascinating. So you'll have to come back on this podcast too once the book is out. So.
Yes, I'll be more than happy to do that.
Excellent. Well, before I let you go, Russell, I am going to throw you a curveball because earlier you asked me to pick a movie that everybody watched and it's my favorite. So if I asked you, what would be your movie?
Empire Strikes Back.
Empire Strikes Back. Yes. That is another really good one.
Well,
So-
I just looked, when I was a kid, I liked Return of the Jedi better, but as I grew up and when I looked at it as an adult, it was Empire Strikes Back. The rest of them, I just think that's the ultimate trilogy. I think George Lucas did a really good job with the 3 prequels.
Yep.
Not as good as the originals. And then when Disney took over,
We
I
don't even
remember
have to talk
going-
about it. Yeah.
I'll
It's
just
just-
leave you with this. I remember I was one of the first people in to see The Force Awakens. I came out and people said, wasn't it great? I said, actually, it kind of sucked. And they're like,
How can
and
you
it
say
did.
that? Yeah, the originals are still hands down the best.
Lucas told them what to do and they ignored him.
Yeah. You can't ignore George Lucas. It's George Lucas, you know?
Yeah.
On another kind of segue note, maybe this is the ADHD, but you mentioned The Empire Strikes Back. Have you seen the burlesque show, The Empire Strips Back?
No.
I highly recommend it. It is a traveling show. I'm sure it's going to be in New York. It is a bundle of laughs. I highly recommend it.
Well, I'll look for it. Thank you.
There you go. Russell, thanks again so much for coming on the show, and I'm sure I will see you around.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
That brings us to the end of this week's episode of Hops and Hedges, hosted by me, Heather Gerard of My Landscape Artist. Now, before you go, here's a quick word from our sponsor, ext.tech. In today's fast-paced world, landscaping businesses need modern tools to keep up with constant change, and that's where EXT comes in. EXT is transforming how landscaping, snow removal, and construction companies manage their operations. Using streamlined client management, real-time financial insights, and a modern mobile app your team will actually enjoy using. And with flat-rate pricing, there are no surprises, just clarity and control. If you're ready to revolutionize and grow your landscaping business, visit ext.tech to learn more. For additional savings, use the code HOPS10 at checkout, or just tell them that Heather sent you.